If these original Sherlock Holmes adventures have captured your interest, please support us on Patreon. Patrons enjoy the perk of hearing our stories before anyone else on YouTube. Your financial backing is essential for keeping this channel alive and thriving. The link to our Patreon is in the description below. It was a particularly stifling end to May that year, even for London. A persistent, unseasonable heat had settled over Baker Street, seeping into the very bricks of the city, and a thick, stifling miasma hung heavy over the thoroughfares, occasionally breaking into violent spring thunderstorms. My good friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, ever a creature of the weather's caprices, had found himself in one of those restless, irritable moods that preceded, or indeed were born of, a truly baffling case. I sat by the open window seeking a breeze while engaged with a treatise on tropical diseases, whilst Holmes, sprawled in his armchair, occasionally punctuated the silence with a discordant scrape of his violin, or a sudden, almost violent puff of his pipe, sending billows of foul-smelling shag towards the ceiling. He was, I knew, deep in thought, for his eyes held that peculiar faraway glaze, signifying a mind racing far beyond the confines of our humble sitting-room. The preceding weeks of spring had offered little to pique his formidable intellect. A tiresome business of a stolen jewel, quickly resolved, and a rather vulgar blackmail affair had merely served to sharpen his appetite for something truly singular. It was this very sentiment, I believe, that made him uncharacteristically attentive to the rather distraught gentleman ushered into our rooms by Mrs. Hudson one sultry afternoon. Mr. Arthur Davies was a man of middle years, dressed in respectable, if somewhat frayed, mourning clothes. His face was etched with a sorrow that went beyond mere grief. There was a palpable sense of injustice about him. He clutched a crumpled handkerchief, his gaze darting about the room as if seeking reassurance in its familiar chaos. "Mr. Holmes," he began, his voice hoarse, "I have been advised by Inspector Lestrade, though he holds little hope, I assure you, to lay my troubles before you. It concerns my aunt, Mrs. Eleanor Finch." Holmes merely nodded, a puff of smoke issuing from his lips like a signal. "Mrs. Finch, I believe, passed away 3 weeks ago. Heart failure, was it not? An elderly lady, if my memory serves me." Davies wrung his hands, the crumpled handkerchief now a tight knot in his palms. "Precisely so, Mr. Holmes. 72 years of age. A sudden seizure, the doctor declared. Yet she had no history of cardiac weakness beyond the ordinary frailties of advancing years. I simply cannot shake the feeling that something was terribly amiss. My aunt was a remarkably vital woman, even at her age. She had just celebrated her birthday the week before." "Indeed," Holmes murmured, his eyes now fixed on Davies, a faint flicker of interest kindling within their depths. "And what precisely leads you to suspect foul play where the medical profession discerns none?" "It is more a gnawing unease than a formal suspicion, Mr. Holmes. My aunt was greatly beloved, a woman of considerable means, though she lived simply. Her wealth, however, is of no concern to me. The timing of her death, coupled with a most disturbing coincidence, is what troubles my mind." Davies paused, collecting himself. "My aunt is part of a larger tragedy. There were 2 others. Lady Ophelia Sterling, a distant acquaintance of my aunt's, who died some 5 weeks ago, and Mrs. Agatha Carmichael, a dear friend of Lady Sterling, who passed a little over 2 months prior." My own brow furrowed. All three, by official account, died of natural causes? I asked, consulting my mental notes of recent London fatalities. Yes, Dr. Watson, all of them. Lady Sterling, a stroke. Mrs. Carmichael, complications from a long-standing respiratory ailment. All elderly, all wealthy, all seemingly natural ends. But consider this, Mr. Holmes, and this is the crux of my unease. All three women were immensely social. Furthermore, all three passed away within exactly 1 week of their respective birthdays. A profound silence descended upon the room. Holmes, who had been leaning back, now sat upright, his eyes no longer glazed but sharp, keenly focused on the trembling Mr. Davies. He removed his pipe, a thin curl of smoke still escaping his lips. "You have, Mr. Davies," Holmes said, his voice unusually quiet. "Brought me a chilling pattern? Watson, fetch me the newspaper archives for the past 3 months, the obituary sections and any notices concerning prominent society women. Mr. Davies, pray tell me everything you know of these three ladies, their habits, their peculiarities, their associates, their finances. Leave nothing unsaid, however trivial it may seem." The next few hours were consumed by a meticulous dissection of the three seemingly unrelated deaths. Holmes, with an almost terrifying intensity, absorbed every detail from the distraught nephew and the crude newspaper clippings I retrieved. The official police reports, procured by a quick telegram to Lestrade, offered little beyond what had already been stated. 3 elderly women living alone or with minimal staff, all of considerable fortune, all dying suddenly without overt signs of violence or struggle. Autopsies in each case had confirmed age-related ailments as the cause. "Observe, Watson," Holmes declared, spreading the papers across the table, his long artistic fingers tracing lines across the newsprint. "The commonalities are striking, yet precisely what one would expect in cases of natural demise amongst the aged. Wealth, solitude, advanced years and medical conditions conveniently vague enough to be attributed to the general decline of the human organism." He lit his pipe once more, the pungent smoke curling about his hawk-like features. "The timing, however, vexes the logical mind. Within a week of their birthdays. This is no mere coincidence. This is a thread, however fine, woven into a tapestry of calculated murder." "Murder, Holmes?" I exclaimed, startled. "There is no evidence of poison, no wounds, no forced entry, no struggle. The doctors were quite explicit." "Ah, Watson, you cling to the vulgar instruments of the common criminal. The blunt weapon, the dagger, the pistol. The true artist of crime, the man of refinement and intellect, seeks to extinguish life while completely erasing the very act of murder. He presents it as a decree of nature, an inevitable surrender to time. Such a man would employ a highly subtle instrument, a slow, insidious corruption, carefully orchestrated to mimic a natural end." Holmes rose and began to pace, his hands clasped behind his back, his dressing gown billowing slightly. "Think, Watson, think. What is a birthday? A date of personal significance, a time for receiving felicitations, for engaging in social discourse. What have we learned of these three ladies? They were, as Mr. Davies so aptly put it, immensely social. More specifically, my inquiries into their personal lives reveal all three were prolific correspondents. Their days, particularly after a celebratory event, such as a birthday, would be filled with the pleasant obligation of sending thank-you notes, of replying to well-wishers, of maintaining their vast social networks through the written word. He stopped abruptly, turning to me, his eyes gleaming with intellectual triumph. Consider the implications. If the timing is linked to their birthdays and their habit is linked to letter writing, what is the most innocuous personal act connecting these two facts? I pondered this, a slow dawning of comprehension beginning to illuminate the murky corners of my mind. Sending letters, you mean? Replying to birthday wishes? Precisely, my dear fellow. What is the most intimate yet utterly mundane act involved in sending a letter? Why, sealing the envelope, of course, I replied, the pieces clicking into place. Licking the gummed flap. Holmes's rare smile, a brief, fleeting curve of his lips, indicated I had hit upon his own conclusion. Elementary, my dear Watson. Elementary, yet devastatingly effective. A slow-acting, subtle toxin applied to the gum of an envelope. A poison so fiendishly designed that its effects would only manifest days after ingestion, conveniently coinciding with the birthday week and the subsequent flurry of correspondence. A poison that would leave no trace discernible by conventional post-mortem examination, perfectly mimicking the symptoms of heart failure, stroke, or respiratory distress. He walked to his chemical bench, picking up a retort glass and swirling its contents. Such a compound would need to be of a most peculiar nature. Difficult to trace, highly lethal in minute doses. My mind immediately turns to the more esoteric realms of toxicology. The alkaloids, Watson. Specifically those derived from certain exotic flora and fauna. I recall a fascinating monograph on the venoms of South American tree frogs, particularly the Philobates terribilis, whose skin secretes batrachotoxin, a potent neurotoxin which, in diluted slow-release form, could induce symptoms strikingly similar to cardiac arrest or neurological collapse, gradually weakening the system until a final, fatal episode. "Who, Holmes?" I interjected, a shiver running down my spine at the cold precision of his logic. Who in all of London would possess such obscure, deadly knowledge? Furthermore, who would have the means to procure such a substance? Therein lies the second, equally crucial thread. The methodical killer, the scientific murderer, is rarely a novice. He is often a man of intellect, a man of science, whose professional career has taken a catastrophic turn. A disgraced medical practitioner, perhaps. One whose intimate knowledge of the human body and its frailties, coupled with a bitter resentment of society, could forge him into a monstrous artisan of death. Holmes's eyes narrowed, gazing into the distance as if already seeing the culprit. "I require a list, Watson. A list of all medical professionals struck from the register in the past decade, particularly those with unconventional interests, eccentric theories, or a known fascination with exotic poisons. Our good friend Lestrade will be useful in providing the official records. For the unofficial, I shall deploy my network of irregulars." Within the day, the Baker Street irregulars, under the eager direction of young Wiggins, were scouring public records and the less reputable medical journals. Lestrade, though initially incredulous at Holmes's wild hypothesis, grudgingly supplied a list of disgraced practitioners. Holmes, with his usual blend of intuition and rigorous logic, cross-referenced these names with any known associates of the deceased women, however tenuous. The name that eventually surfaced, like a dark, unwelcome spectre, was Dr. Alistair Morgan. A brilliant surgeon, once lauded for his innovative techniques, Morgan had plummeted into ignominy some 8 years prior. His downfall had been spectacular. A series of unethical human trials involving experimental animal venoms, ostensibly for therapeutic purposes, which had resulted in severe incapacitation for several patients and the death of one unfortunate soul. Struck off the medical register, financially ruined and socially ostracized, Morgan had vanished from public life. He retreated into a reclusive existence, nursing his grievances and continuing his dark researches in secret. "Morgan," Holmes murmured, studying an old newspaper clipping detailing the scandal. A man whose intellect, once dedicated to healing, was perverted by ambition and a dangerously detached morality. He would possess the precise blend of medical knowledge, pharmacological expertise, and a cynical disregard for human life required for such a sophisticated form of murder. The South American frog toxins, Watson, are highly restricted. A man of Morgan's connections, even disgraced, could certainly acquire them through clandestine channels. Our next step was to ascertain Morgan's current whereabouts and establish any link between him and the 3 deceased women. A further investigation, leveraging Wiggins's remarkable street sense, revealed Morgan to be residing in a secluded, dilapidated house in a quiet suburb of Blackheath. He lived under the assumed name of Mr. Silas. Crucially, Holmes discovered the vital connective tissue of the crime. Years ago, during his more desperate financial period following his disgrace, Morgan had worked as an independent auditor for a small charitable trust of which Mrs. Finch, Lady Stirling and Mrs. Carmichael were all prominent benefactresses. He possessed their names, their addresses, and the exact dates of their birthdays, recorded in the Trust's confidential files for honorary mentions. His motive, Holmes surmised, was a twisted form of revenge against the wealthy society women who had financed the very medical establishment that cast him out. "The method of delivery, Watson, is the remaining puzzle," Holmes mused as we studied the map of Blackheath. "How does he introduce the poisoned envelopes into their personal stationery? He cannot simply walk into their homes. The timing strongly suggests he contaminates their supply around their birthdays, knowing they will then use them for thank-you notes." By the following afternoon, Holmes had the answer. "Our surveillance yielded the final clue, Watson. Morgan, operating as Mr. Silas, recently secured menial employment as a dispatch clerk at Higgins & Sons, a small, exclusive stationery shop in Mayfair. It is the very shop favoured by the social elite for their bespoke, watermarked envelopes. He possesses unfettered access to their outgoing deliveries." Holmes formulated his plan with characteristic speed and precision. We needed to catch Morgan in the act, armed with irrefutable evidence of his ghastly trade. He identified a potential 4th victim, Lady Beatrice Beaumont, a dowager duchess of considerable means and a prolific letter writer, whose 70th birthday was only a week away. Holmes confirmed through his sources that Lady Beaumont had placed her annual birthday order for custom stationery with Higgins & Sons just 3 days prior. "He is stealing blank, monogrammed envelopes from the shop," Holmes explained, a grim satisfaction in his tone. "He takes them back to his Blackheath residence, applies his lethal lacquer, and then discreetly slips the doctored envelopes into the outbound delivery parcels at work the following day. We shall pay a visit to his Blackheath laboratory tonight, before Lady Beaumont's parcel leaves the shop." That evening, as the stifling heat finally broke into a torrential May downpour, Holmes, Lestrade, and I, accompanied by 2 burly constables, descended upon Dr. Alastair Morgan's secluded residence. The heavy oak door, its frame rotted by years of damp, yielded with a splintering crash to Lestrade's forceful boot. We surged into the dimly lit hallway. Morgan, a gaunt, intense man with sharp, intelligent eyes and a perpetually sour expression, froze at the doorway of his parlour. His face, initially composed, paled rapidly as his gaze fell upon Holmes. "Dr. Morgan, I believe," Holmes stated, his voice calm, cutting effortlessly through the sound of the rain lashing against the windows. "My apologies for this untimely intrusion. We have reason to believe you can assist us with an inquiry into certain unconventional practices." Morgan's lips thinned. "I am a retired gentleman, Mr. Holmes. I have nothing to say to the police. I demand you state your business or leave my premises." "Our business, Dr. Morgan," Holmes continued, stepping past him into the small, cluttered room, "concerns the untimely demises of Mrs. Eleanor Finch, Lady Ophelia Sterling, and Mrs. Agatha Carmichael. All died within a week of their birthdays. All were prolific letter writers. All, Dr. Morgan, died of symptoms remarkably consistent with the gradual effects of batrachotoxin, a neurotoxin derived from the skin glands of South American dart frogs." Morgan's face drained of all colour. His eyes darted toward the workbench occupying the far wall. Holmes, with a swift, predatory movement, crossed the room. There, laid out under the harsh glare of a gas lamp, were stacks of ornate watermarked stationery bearing the crest of Lady Beatrice Beaumont. Beside them sat several vials of a viscous, yellowish liquid, a fine brush, and a ledger containing a list of wealthy widows, their addresses and their birthdays meticulously noted. Morgan let out a strangled cry, a sound of fury and despair. "How dare you? This is an outrage. My researches are private. These women were old. They would have perished soon, regardless." "Indeed, Dr. Morgan," Holmes responded, picking up one of the envelopes with a pair of silver tweezers. The gummed flap shone with a suspicious, glossy sheen. "You, however, decided their time was up. The insidious beauty of your scheme lay in its almost untraceable nature. You identified the perfect medium, the gum of an envelope, an intimate daily act for a prolific correspondent. You selected the perfect poison, mimicking natural ailments and leaving no discernible trace in conventional autopsy. Finally, you chose the perfect timing, capitalizing on the flurry of thank-you notes after a birthday, ensuring the victim herself would administer the fatal dose." Holmes held up one of the vials. "Batrachotoxin, a truly fiendish choice. A masterpiece of medical murder, Morgan, had you avoided such a rigidly predictable pattern." Morgan sank into a chair, his face a mask of bitter resentment. "They cast me out, Holmes," he hissed, his voice dropping to a chilling, venomous whisper. "They lauded my genius when it suited them, yet condemned me the moment my methods outpaced their narrow provincial morals. These women, these pillars of society, funded the very council that ruined me. They were complacent in their wealth, whilst my brilliance withered in obscurity. I merely hastened nature's course and reclaimed a modicum of justice." Lestrade, ever pragmatic, signalled to his constables. "Take him away. Dr. Morgan, you will have ample time to explain your justice to the magistrate." As Morgan was led out into the rain, his defiant sneer replaced by a chilling resignation, Holmes carefully secured the evidence. A truly intricate web of depravity, Watson. The man's intellect was undeniable, his methods ingenious. Without the one recurring flaw, the proximity of death to their birthdays, his perfect crime might well have remained entirely undetected. Back in the quiet sanctity of Baker Street, the storm had passed, leaving behind a cool, refreshing night air drifting through the open window. Holmes settled into his armchair, a profound weariness replacing his earlier intensity. "The human heart, Watson," he mused, striking a match for his pipe, "is capable of both the most profound love and the most chilling malevolence. Morgan was a twisted genius, a man who harnessed his scientific knowledge to destroy his fellow man, clothing his malice in the deceptive garb of natural inevitability. The greatest dangers are rarely found in the overt violence of the thug. They lurk instead within the subtle, calculating cruelty of the educated mind." I nodded, stirring my tea. The stifling heat of May had finally broken, washing the city clean. The shadow of Dr. Alistair Morgan, the poisoner of birthdays, would long linger in my memory, a dark testament to the ingenuity of man and to the extraordinary vigilant intellect of my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, who alone could pierce such an impenetrable veil of deceit. Want to unlock the next story early? Do not forget to check out our Patreon using the link below.